back. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan John.
And I'm Dotsa Kavar. And on the show today, we have news from the U.S., where U.S. has announced a new military aid package for Ukraine, including the Patriot missile defense systems. But the terms of the deal have changed, as Trump insists that EU will be paying U.S. for these weapons. We'll get you a full report on that.
And another shooting incident has been reported in the U.S. where a gunman killed two women at a church in Kentucky. The shooter had earlier shot and wounded a state police officer as well that was outside an airport. We'll bring you all the details on that. Let's start with the headlines. This is World DNA.
Which they desperately need, because Putin really surprised a lot of people.
President Donald Trump says U.S. would send Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. The weapons delivery will be part of a new deal, which Trump says will involve NATO paying for some of the weapons it sends to Ukraine.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov meets with his Chinese counterpart in Beijing to discuss Ukraine and relations with the United States. Russia's top diplomat is in China following a visit to North Korea.
Gaza, we are talking, and hopefully we're going to get that straightened out over the next week. Let's see what happens.
President Donald Trump says talks are ongoing over a Gaza ceasefire deal, and he hopes for progress in the next week, even as negotiations in Doha appear stalled.
Two women killed in a shooting at a church in Kentucky. Police officer injured by the same gunman earlier. Suspect also killed in police firing.
Anti-migrant groups continue to clash with riot police in a town in southeastern Spain. Violent clashes erupted after a 68-year-old man was allegedly beaten in an attack being blamed on migrant youth.
A second Nipah virus-related death reported in India's Kerala state prompts an alert in 6 districts. State government confirms a 57-year-old man from Palakkad district who died on the 12th of July was found Nipah positive.
Passenger shares video claiming a spice jet flight from Delhi to Srinagar dropped several hundred meters in free fall over the Banihal Pass. No official statement from the airline yet.
Wall Street jitters from new U.S. tariff threats weighed on Asian markets as President Trump eyed steep levies on EU and Mexican imports.
Lord's test hangs in balance heading into day 5. India need 135 runs to win, while England are just 5 wickets away from victory. Top story on World DNA. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a new military aid package for Ukraine, including Patriot missile defense systems.
And this is to help Ukraine in its fight against a Russian invasion. The move comes as relations between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin continue to deteriorate. Listen to this.
I haven't agreed on the number yet, but they're going to have some because they do need protection. But the European Union is paying for it. We're not paying anything for it, but we will send it. It'll be business for us, and we will send them Patriots, which they desperately need, because Putin really surprised a lot of people. He talks nice, and then he bombs everybody in the evening. So there's a little bit of a problem there, and I don't like it.
The weapons delivery will be part of a new deal, which Trump says will involve NATO paying the U.S. for some of the weapons it sends to Ukraine.
Also on Sunday, U.S. senators unveiled a bipartisan sanctions bill aimed at pressuring Moscow and its allies. The legislation, described by Senator Lindsey Graham as a sledgehammer, would grant Trump the authority to impose massive economic penalties on countries that help Russia, including those that purchase Russian goods like India, China and Brazil.
A U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg will visit Ukraine on Monday for high-level talks. Trump is also expected to meet NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, where he says a major statement on Russia will be made.
Germany, on the other hand, has ruled out sending its long-range Taurus missiles to Kiev. Instead, Berlin will finance the production of hundreds of similar systems capable of striking deep inside Russian territory. And that will happen inside Ukraine, the production of it. According to reports, the new weapons will strike targets over 500 kilometers away, enabling Ukraine to disrupt Russian logistics and command centers. Deliveries are expected to begin by the end of this month.
Now, Russian Foreign Minister, meanwhile, Sergei Lavrov has met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Beijing. Now, they discussed relations with the U.S. and the outlook for settling the Ukrainian crisis. China, a diplomatic and economic ally of Moscow, claims to be neutral in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but has never denounced Russia's 2022 invasion nor called it to withdraw its troops. Many of Ukraine's allies believe that China has provided support for Russia.
Ukrainian intelligence forces have claimed killing members of a suspected Russian FSB assassination cell operating in the Kiev region.
Now, this action comes shortly after the killing of a senior officer in Ukraine's SBU Secret Service the Security Service, Colonel Ivan Voronich. Now, the operation targeted a man and a woman believed to be agents of Russia's Federal Security Service. According to an official statement from the SBU, the two individuals were the main suspects responsible for Voronich's assassination.
The ambush took place last week near Voronich's residence. Surveillance footage captured the exact moment he was approached and shot multiple times at close range. Despite the attack occurring in broad daylight, the assailants managed to escape the scene immediately after. The SBU says that these agents, allegedly acting on instructions from their Russian handlers, kept a close watch on Voronich. Their mission was to track his daily movements with a clear objective of eliminating him. The SBU claims suspects received precise coordinates to locate a hidden pistol equipped with a silencer, which was later used in the killing.
Colonel Voronich was reportedly involved in covert operations inside Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine and is believed to have played a role in organizing last year's surprise Ukrainian incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Moving across to West Asia, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that talks are ongoing over Gaza, expressing hopes for progress in the next week.
And this even as ceasefire negotiations in Doha are stalled.
Gaza, we are talking, and hopefully we're going to get that straightened out over the next week. Let's see what happens.
A senior Hamas official was also quoted in Palestinian media as saying that the negotiations over a ceasefire have reached a difficult stage and the coming hours are critical. The unnamed official was quoted as saying that the mediators are working to advance the talks, but claim they continue to encounter Israel's stubbornness. However, responding to claims that he and his government are obstructing a deal, Netanyahu slammed the Hebrew language media, claiming they are always echoing Hamas propaganda and that they are always wrong.
Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has labelled Israel's plan to move Palestinians in Gaza into a humanitarian city as essentially a concentration camp. In conversation with the British Guardian newspaper about the plan laid out last week by Defence Minister Israel Katz, Olmert said that if the Palestinians will be deported into the new humanitarian city, then one can say that it is part of an ethnic cleansing, something he pointed out which hasn't yet happened. He called it the inevitable interpretation of the current plan to create a camp for hundreds of thousands of people.
Local officials in Gaza say at least 8 Palestinians, most of them children, were killed and more than a dozen others were wounded in an Israeli missile strike, which the military said missed its intended target.
The Israeli military said that it had intended to hit a militant in the area, but that a malfunction had caused the missile to fall dozens of meters from the intended target. Now, in a statement, the IDF said that it regrets any harm to uninvolved civilians and added that the incident was under review. Water shortages in Gaza have worsened sharply in recent weeks, with fuel shortages causing desalination and sanitation facilities to close, making people dependent on collection centers where they can fill up their plastic containers.
Gaza's health ministry said on Sunday that more than 58,000 people have been killed since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas in October of 2023, with 139 added to the death toll over just the past 24 hours.
Plumes of smoke were seen rising from the Gaza Strip on Sunday as the Israeli military continued its operation in the enclave. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has suspended the country's police minister Senzo Mchunu, announcing an investigation over claims that he was colluding with criminal syndicates.
Ramaphosa made the announcement in a national broadcast after serious allegations were made by a top police official in KwaZulu-Natal province, Lieutenant General Nalaza Mkhwanazi.
In his address, Ramaphosa announced the creation of a judicial commission and announced Indian-origin law professor and member of ruling African National Congress, Feroz Kachalia, as the acting Minister of Police.
In order for the commission to execute its functions effectively, I have decided to put the Minister of Police, Mr. Senzo Mchunu, on leave of absence with immediate effect. The Minister has undertaken to give his full cooperation to the Commission to enable it to work properly. I have decided to appoint Professor Feroz Kachalia as acting Minister of Police.
And during a press briefing last Sunday, Mkhwanazi had alleged that Mchunu and Sibia disbanded a crucial crime unit that was tasked with investigating repeated politically motivated killings in the province. He had claimed that the unit was disbanded immediately after. It was revealed that crime syndicates were behind the killings. Ramaphosa had promised that he would address the situation after his return from the BRICS summit in Brazil last week.
He added that the commission would include some of the country's crime and justice agencies, including the National Prosecuting Authority and the State Security Agency, and will deliver its report in 3 to 6 months.
The commission will investigate the role of current or former senior officials in certain institutions who may have aided or abetted the alleged criminal activity, or failed to act on credible intelligence or internal warnings, or benefited financially or politically from a syndicate's operations. These institutions are the South African Police Service, the National Prosecuting Authority, State security agency, the judiciary, and the magistracy.
Machuno has rejected the allegations, describing them as insinuations made without evidence or due processes. As for reports, Makwanazi himself is under investigation for allegations of corruption in the awarding of a bulletproof vest contract. In the meantime, opposition parties have criticized President Ramaphosa for not firing Machuno instead of placing him on a leave of absence. Now, chaos erupted in Spain's Pamplona as bulls charged through the streets during the final run of the San Fermin festival.
8 people were injured in the high-speed dash as thrill-seeking revelers sprinted amid the centuries-old tradition. Take a look at these visuals. Shifting focus to the U.S. now, a gunman killed 2 women at a church in Kentucky.
Now, the shooter had earlier shot and wounded a state police officer outside an airport. The suspect was later killed by police.
The women were killed at the Richmond Road Baptist Church in Lexington. 2 men were also wounded there, including one who was in critical condition. Authorities did not provide the suspect's name or age.
Now, the suspect fired at a state trooper after being pulled over near Bluegrass Airport at about 11:30 a.m. local time in the Fayette County. The shooting happened on a road near the airport. The trooper was being treated at a nearby hospital and was in stable condition.
On July 13, 2025, around 11:36 a.m., Lexington police officers were dispatched for a shooting involving a Kentucky State Trooper on Terminal Drive. The trooper had pulled over a vehicle on Terminal Drive after receiving a license plate reader alert in the area of Versailles Road. The trooper was shot and the suspect fled. While that shooting occurred on Terminal Drive, it was unrelated to the Bluegrass Airport and did not occur inside the airport terminal. The trooper is in stable condition and receiving medical treatment.
The suspect then carjacked a vehicle about 16 kilometers from the airport and fled to the church, where the individual began firing at people on church grounds. Police tracked the location of the carjacked vehicle to the church.
4 individuals were shot on church property. 2 female victims were pronounced deceased at the scene. The other 2 victims, both male, were transported to a local hospital. 1 victim was reported to have sustained critical injuries, and the other was reported in stable condition. The suspect was shot by responding law enforcement and was pronounced deceased at the scene.
While the police chief did not offer any motive for the shooting, he did say that there was some indication that the suspect may have known some of the people at the church. Now, a new Senate report has found multiple failures that nearly cost Donald Trump's life.
Of course, that attempt happened last year. It was a failed attempt, and the report now points to security lapses by the Secret Service during last year's campaign rally, which took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Lawmakers say the agency ignored warnings and didn't hold enough people accountable.
Now, the shooting took place 1 year ago on July 13, 2024, when President Trump was at a rally in Pennsylvania. It was a near miss. The bullet pierced through his ear and 1 person in the crowd was killed.
The gunman was identified as a 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was shot dead by Secret Service agents soon after that incident. A new report from the Senate Homeland Security Committee says that the attack could have been prevented, and the report calls it a cascade of failures. It says the Secret Service ignored direct threats and failed to plan properly.
Senator Rand Paul said that the agency showed bureaucratic indifference. He called it a complete breakdown of security.
The report also criticizes the disciplinary action which was taken. No one was fired. Only 6 agents were suspended for anywhere between 10 and 42 days. The committee says that wasn't enough. It recommended more punishment and stronger punishments.
10 days after the shooting, then Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigned, but the committee says leadership failures went far deeper.
In a statement, current Secret Service Director Sean Curran said the agency has learned from the incident and substantive reforms are now in place. And Donald Trump's aggressive trade strategy is facing growing doubts from his own voter base now.
A new Politico Public First poll shows signs of strain between president's economic agenda and supporters who helped elect him in 2024.
Well, the poll conducted in June shows that between a quarter and nearly half of Trump 2024 voters have reservations about his tariff policies, especially those targeting China. Nearly 1 in 4 Trump voters say his tariffs are hurting America's ability to secure better trade deals.
63% MAGA base believes that tariffs will benefit U.S. The Democrats, on the other hand, have a completely different opinion, with 86% saying tariffs will hurt U.S.
The country is divided on whether the president should be able to impose tariffs without congressional approval. Only 45% support, while 44% believe Congress should have a say.
Well, when it comes to China, Trump's voter base remains divided. Just half of Trump supporters believe his China tariffs will actually benefit American companies. 25% believe that the tariff war with China will hurt the U.S. The rest of the Trump base says they don't know or it will have no impact on U.S. The other side of the political aisle, 70% of the Democrats say the tariffs war with China will hurt the U.S., while only 8% say it will have positive impact.
Trump has repeatedly called the country a top economic rival, and many Americans agree that 30% of Trump voters say maintaining strong trade ties with Beijing should be a U.S. priority at this point.
And according to the survey, some goods, including major appliances, have seen a 4% price spike in just 1 month following new tariffs. Retailers are citing import duties as a reason for increasing costs, putting pressure on household budgets.
As Trump pushes ahead with a new wave of tariff threats, this latest data suggests that even some of his most loyal backers aren't convinced the strategy will pay off. Trump has so far defended his policies as a necessary correction to years of trade imbalance. But with the 2026 midterms approaching, the Republican Party needs good results on economic fronts as soon as possible.
Now, Giselle Pellico, who has been internationally hailed after testifying in public against her husband and dozens of other men who raped her, has been awarded France's top civic honor.
Pellico earned international tributes for her bravery for testifying at a trial in 2024 against her former husband, Dominique Pellico, who drugged her and arranged for her to be raped by dozens of men. And this went on for nearly a decade.
The 72-year-old has been named as Knight of the Legion of Honor on a list announced ahead of France's July 14 National Day. Pellico was among 589 people named for the honor, which recognizes merit-based national service.
Dominique Pellico, Giselle's former husband, and dozens of strangers he's recruited online raped her in her own bed for nearly a decade. The tragic saga did not just end there. Dominique also meticulously documented the abuse in files on his computer. A French court in December sentenced him to 20 years in prison.
And Giselle showed massive courage in exposing the case and refused to remain anonymous. She publicly testified at a trial in 2024 against her former husband, Dominique. His co-conspirators tried to claim they were unaware that the acts were not consensual and blamed the husband. Jose Pellico has not spoken further since the trial.
And every year, nearly 2 million people are bitten by snakes, resulting in nearly 130,000 deaths.
Well, most of these deaths happen due to lack of access to anti-venom injections. However, a Liverpool-based research center is nearing a breakthrough that can help avert these deaths.
A team of 25 scientists at School of Tropical Medicine's Center for Snakebite Research and Interventions is currently developing an anti-venom pill that could potentially replace traditional anti-venom injections. The team is working on faster and more affordable anti-venoms, such as oral tablets that eliminate the need for injections. They are preparing to begin trials on snakebite victims in Ghana and Brazil.
Well, the team has already completed a phase 1 trial of treatment pill Unithiol on healthy volunteers in Kenya. Well, next year they plan to begin a phase 2 trial on actual snakebite patients, testing Unithiol alongside other treatments.
Currently, the only treatment for venomous snake bites is anti-venom, made by attracting antibodies from animals exposed to snake venom. However, these pills could phase out the 19th century method soon. Eventually, tourists might be able to carry the pills when visiting high-risk areas.
And well, at times for a short break, we have more on the other side of World DNA, beginning with the threat of Nipah virus looms in Kerala, the state of in India. The state witnessed a second death related to the virus on 12th of July.
And world number 1 Yannick Sinner has ended Carlos Alcaraz's reign at Wimbledon. The Italian beat the 2-time defending champion to win his maiden Wimbledon title at the All England Club.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna and I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines.
Gaza, we are talking, and hopefully we're going to get that straightened out. over the next week. Let's see what happens.
President Donald Trump says talks are ongoing over a Gaza ceasefire deal, and he hopes for progress in the next week, even as negotiations in Doha appear stalled.
We will send them Patriots, which they desperately need, because Putin really surprised a lot of people.
President Trump says US would send Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. The weapons delivery will be part of a new deal, which Trump says will involve NATO paying for some of the weapons that it sends to Ukraine.
We will send them Patriots, which they desperately need.
French President Emmanuel Macron announced his plan to push forward France's defense spending, pledging to double the military budget by 2027, 3 years earlier than originally planned.
A medical transport jet crashed and burst into flames just after taking off at London Southend Airport. The plane was equipped with medical systems for transporting patients, although it is unclear whether a patient was on board.
A second Nipah virus-related death in India's Kerala prompts an alert in 6 districts. State government confirms a 57-year-old man from Palakkad district who died on July 12th was found Nipah positive.
Well, I think if Jerome Powell stepped down, it would be a great thing. I don't know that he's going to, but he should.
President Trump urges Jerome Powell to step down as Fed chair, criticizing interest rate policies ahead of potential rate cut in September.
The Lord's test hangs in the balance heading into day 5. India need 135 runs to win, while England are just 6 wickets away from victory.
Devotees visit temples across India to offer prayers on the first Monday of the holy Sawan month.
And the threat of Nipah virus looms in Kerala as the state witnessed a second death related to the virus on July 12th.
A 57-year-old man from Palakkad district of Kerala who had tested positive for Nipah infection during preliminary examinations died on Saturday while he was undergoing treatment at a private hospital.
Now, the Kerala Health Minister, Avina George, has said that the final confirmation of the infection will be made only after the National Institute of Virology in Pune publishes the final results. Now, in response to the fresh suspected case, the government has ramped up contact tracing and field-level surveillance in the area. A list of 46 people who came into contact with the deceased patient has been drawn up.
Special vigilance has been issued to hospitals in Palakkad, Malappuram, Kozhikode, Kannur, Wayanad and Thrissur districts. Authorities have asked people to avoid unnecessary hospital visits and instructed them to wear masks while venturing out.
Now, if the infection is confirmed, this will be the second Nipah death. A few days ago, a woman hailing from Malappuram district had passed away due to Nipah.
China and Japan found themselves locked in another round of accusations over a series of increasingly close encounters between their military aircraft in East China Sea.
Now, in the past week, both the countries have accused each other of flying too close for comfort. China's defense ministry claims that Japanese surveillance planes have been flying into what China defines as its air defense identification zone, a zone where foreign aircraft are supposed to announce their presence to prevent misunderstandings or conflict.
And on the other hand, Japan argues that the real issue is Chinese fighter jets coming dangerously close to Japanese aircraft. Now, just a few days ago, Japanese officials issued a warning after a Chinese JH-7 fighter bomber reportedly approached a Japanese YS-11EB electronic intelligence plane on two separate occasions. During one of these incidents, Tokyo says the two planes were just 30 meters apart from each other.
Now, Japan called it a dangerous move that could have ended in disaster. Now, this isn't the first time the two sides have clashed over close encounters in the air. Now, a similar incident occurred last month. Japan said a Chinese combat aircraft flew extremely close to a Japanese Navy P-3C surveillance aircraft over the Pacific.
Both sides are clearly on edge, and each is watching the other's military moves very closely. Japan has voiced concern about China's growing military presence, especially near its southwestern islands, while China insists it is simply protecting its own airspace.
Even as the two countries try to ease some trade restrictions, their relationship remains strained on security issues. In a move that adds another layer to the situation, the United States, South Korea, and Japan have just carried out a major joint aerial drill over the Korean peninsula. This exercise brought together American B-52 bombers, South Korean F-15KS, and Japanese F-15s flying together over international waters near Jeju Island. Now, despite some attempts at easing diplomatic tensions, such as China partially lifting its ban on Japanese seafood imports, the military confrontation between these two powerful neighbors shows no signs of cooling down. Now, U.S. is pivoting its focus towards Indo-Pacific.
And Washington has asked its allies in the region to make their position clear on what they would do in case of a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan. U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Elbridge Colby has reportedly sought the stand of its allies on the issue during recent talks with defense officials of Japan and Australia. According to the Financial Times, a request from U.S. caught Tokyo and Canberra totally off guard, as the U.S. itself does not offer a guarantee to defend Taiwan.
The Canberra and Tokyo are taking a cautious path. Australia has made it clear that it will not commit its troops in advance. Australia's defense industry minister has said that the decision will be made by the government of the time. Japan, on the other hand, has dodged the issue by saying that it is difficult to answer such a hypothetical question.
Now, this comes after Colby, in a post on X, said, I quote him here, "The Department of Defense is focused on implementing the President's America First agenda of restoring deterrence and achieving peace through strength, which includes methods by urging allies to step up their defense spending and other efforts related to our collective defense," quote unquote.
Now, security of Taiwan is crucial for U.S. as the country sits at the heart of a global supply chain. Economically, it is a backbone of global chip supply and a home of world's largest and most advanced chip maker, TSMC. Taiwan produces about 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, a critical component that is widely considered as a defining technology of the 21st century.
While US does not officially recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation, it supports Taiwan's ability to defend itself. The US is Taiwan's most important arms supplier despite a lack of formal diplomatic ties. Taiwan has US supplied F-16 fighter jets, multiple rockets and missile systems, as well as Reaper drones.
While Taiwan has already deployed a HIMARS rocket system, Taiwan's deployment of high-mobility artillery rocket system has captured the attention of military analysts around the globe.
US also maintains a significant military presence in the region. Apart from military bases in South Korea and Japan, it has its own base in the Pacific Ocean, and that base is located in Guam.
Now, Taiwan has faced increased military pressure from China in recent time, including several rounds of war games, as Beijing seeks to assert its sovereign claims over the island. Taiwan rejects China's assertion of sovereignty.
Trump official criticizes Fed Chief Jerome Powell for ostentatious office renovations as Trump takes aim over interest rates.
Now, Trump's budget chief said that the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, has grossly mismanaged the Fed. Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought also suggested Powell had misled Congress about a pricey renovation of the central bank's headquarters. Vought's broadside opens up a new front in the Trump administration's war on the Fed chief. For a president, removing the Fed chair is a direct method of sending a message. The Federal Reserve Act states in Section 10 that the chair and other members are subject to being removed for cause by the president.
Now, the term cause has always been understood by legal experts to refer to misconduct or misuse of authority. Since the law is not clear on cause, the question of whether a president can fire the Fed chair becomes tricky.
For now, though, the Trump administration seems to be targeting Powell with costs, citing the high cost of the Fed's headquarters renovation. Vought said that Powell has grossly mismanaged the Fed. He said while continuing to run a deficit since financial year 23, the first time in the Fed's history, the Fed is way over budget on the renovation of its headquarters. Vought added that the cost is now up to $2.5 billion, roughly $700 million over its initial cost.
Now, in the unlikely event that Fed Chair Powell is removed or if he steps down before his term ends in May of 2026, we would likely see a sharp steepening in the Treasury curve as markets price in cuts. Well, inflation risks and diminished Fed independence along with that. And that could create an even more toxic mix for the dollar than Liberation Day, with Euro, Yen and Swiss franc best placed to benefit.
Well, I think if Jerome Powell stepped down, it would be a great thing. I don't know that he's going to, but he should. Jerome Powell's been very bad for our country. We should have the lowest interest rate on earth, and we don't. He just refuses to do it, and yet he's spending $2.5 billion rebuilding the Fed, the Federal Reserve building.
An early departure of Powell would be followed quickly by a replacement super dove as head of the Fed. If that happens, we can acknowledge that the Fed would swing more dovish than it has been. Now, still, it's a majority decision. The committee is likely to remain as divided as the latest minutes suggest, but with a bias to keep rates on hold until the coast is cleared to cut them. Now, are markets too confident in a September Fed rate cut? Well, yes, but are central banks too nervous about another inflation wave?
And that's also a yes. In this next report, we break down what to expect from a data-fueled week in financial markets. Take a look.
Central banks, or some of them at least, seem increasingly worried about another inflation wave. However, some economists are not that convinced. The latest batch of Federal Reserve minutes revealed a growing concern that tariffs could feed a much longer-lasting bout of inflation. But economists argue that, in theory, tariffs are a one-off price rise. In the UK, the Bank of England's chief economist Hupill has warned that inflation has a habit of becoming more entrenched once headline CPI rises close to 4%, a level that we're not far away from right now. Well, that's a posh way of reminding us that things snowballed after the 2022 energy price shock in a way that the models failed to predict. That, in a nutshell, is the problem. Central banks are still haunted by the most recent inflation spike, which economists everywhere fail to predict. But inflation isn't going to be long-lasting, unless firms have the power to keep passing on higher costs and workers have the power to demand higher wages and protect their disposable incomes. There is no government stimulus as we saw previously post-COVID. President Trump's tax bill doesn't represent a major fiscal stimulus. The bulk of the tax measures extend what's already in place. The jobs market story has also changed a lot since the last inflation wave. Today, the job market heat has entirely disappeared. In Britain, the backdrop is looking grim. The scope of wage growth to amplify an externally driven inflation shock has diminished considerably. For the time being, central banks are genuinely concerned about the risk of inflation taking off again. But investors may be underestimating that. Take the Fed, where markets are pretty confident the Fed will cut rates in September. Now, for that to happen, the recent remarkably benign trend in US inflation needs to continue. That is not something the Fed predicts. Tariffs are always going to hit prices with a lag. Economists expect a spike in this week's core inflation data, as well as chunky rises through the summer as those tariffs take their full effect on goods prices. That would be big news for markets. Renewed inflation fears could play a spoil sport temporarily. And temporary is the key word here. This inflation story should be a short-term thing, which means everything economists have argued still holds. Part of the problem right now is that services inflation is still pretty elevated. But that should start to change. UK services inflation should come lower in this week's release. In the US, weaker consumer demand coupled with falling rents should take the heat out of service sector inflation as the year wears on. And when that happens, the likes of Fed and BOE should be much more confident in getting on with the job of cutting interest rates. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
World number one Yannick Sinner has ended Carlos Alcaraz's reign at Wimbledon. The Italian produced a brilliant performance against the two-time defending champion.
And of course, he has won his maiden title at the All England Club. 5 weeks ago, Alcaraz beat Sinner in an extraordinary French Open final. Sinner squandered 3 championship points in Paris, but this time he wouldn't be denied. The top seed got his revenge against the Spaniard on Wimbledon's iconic center court. Alcaraz was on a 24-match winning streak and even won the opening set of the final. But Sinner kept his composure and was comfortably the superior player over the next 3 sets. A break each in the second, third, and fourth sets was enough for Sinner to complete a 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4 triumph in 3 hours and 4 minutes.
Sinner becomes the first Italian to win a Wimbledon singles title and also ends Alcaraz's perfect record in Grand Slam finals. 23-year-old Sinner now has 4 Grand Slam titles, 1 less than Alcaraz.
Yes, I would say mostly emotionally, because I had a very tough loss in Paris, so But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how you win or you lose. The especially important tournaments, you just have to understand what you did wrong, trying to work on that. That's exactly what we did. We tried to accept the loss and just kept working. And this is for sure one of the reasons why I hold this trophy here.
It's always a bad feeling, you know, losing matches. I think it's a little bit even worse when you're losing a final. But you know, overall, I'm just really proud about everything I've done. You know, the last 4 weeks on grass here in London, and just leave Wimbledon. I just left the court with the head really high, because you know that I just did everything that I could today.
And the Lord's test is perfectly poised heading into the final day.
India need 135 more runs to take a 2-1 series lead, but England are just 5 wickets away from seizing a victory themselves. With the series locked at 1-1, everything's on the line at the home of cricket.
Now, the match is essentially a second innings shootout, with both the teams posting identical scores in the first innings. England began day 4 on 2-4-0 but lost wickets at regular intervals. Now, after early strikes from Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj, Joe Root and skipper Ben Stokes put together a stubborn partnership of 67 runs for the 5th wicket. Washington soon broke through after tea by dismissing Root for 40. The off-spinner went on to register his career best overseas figure of 4 for 22 as England were bowled out for 192.
India got off to a shaky start in their pursuit of a 2-1 series lead. Yashasvi Jaiswal fell for a duck early before Bryden Cars struck twice. First removing Karun Nair for 14, then dismissing skipper Shubman Gill for just 6. Cars bowled with discipline and movement, putting India under constant pressure. Stokes added to the damage late in the day, cleaning up night watchman Akash Deep on the last ball as India ended the day on 58 for 4. Now, first innings centurion KL Rahul is unbeaten on 33. Right, next up, let's take a look at box office collections of the newly released Hollywood movies, starting with James Gunn's highly anticipated Superman, which has launched the new DC universe with an impressive global debut, pulling in an estimated $217 million worldwide in its opening weekend. The film earned a strong $122 million from the North American market. Internationally, Superman garnered an estimated $95 million from 78 markets, and the critical and audience reception for Superman has been largely positive. This positive word of mouth is expected to help the film leg out in the coming weeks. Industry analysts are optimistic that Superman is well positioned to become one of the year's top domestic grossers, with projections for it to clear $300 million in North America. The film's robust opening marks a strong foundation for the future of the DC universe.
Jurassic World Rebirth continues its thunderous run at the global box office, roaring past the $500 million mark worldwide by the end of its second week. The Scarlett Johansson-led dinosaur saga has amassed an estimated $529.5 million globally, solidifying its position as one of the biggest hits of 2025.
And Brad Pitt's high-octane racing drama F1 continues to impress at the global box office, surpassing $393 million worldwide in its third weekend. The film has proven to be a consistent performer, demonstrating strong appeal for its immersive depiction of the world of Formula One racing. Domestically, F1 added an estimated $13 million in its third weekend, pushing its North American total to approximately $136 million. Its international run has been particularly robust, contributing a significant portion to its global accumulation with over $257 million from overseas markets. Directed by Joseph Kosinski, the film has been lauded for its stunning cinematography and realistic racing sequences.
Well, that's all on World DNA today. But before we wrap up, here's a look at all the climate stories making headlines across the world. Do stay tuned. You're watching WION The World.